All right, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight here. Um, we're happy to present this webinar to you on behalf of Happy Camper Capital, and also in collaboration with the $100 million Club. We're welcome to have that partnership here to bring in more people to these webinars to get great education and financial learning. We're happy to have joining us today Adam Lindy. He was one of the founding partners of Happy Camper Capital. He also has a background in business coaching and development. He's helped many successful companies and their owners and individuals all across different professional backgrounds to achieve success through strategic goal setting, accountability, and measured results. I have the privilege of speaking to Adam just about every day and getting personally coached by him as well. So I'm very happy to have him here tonight to talk to all of us. So Adam, I'll pass time to you.
Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate the introduction. Sometimes it's the privilege of talking every day, and other times it's, oh crap, there's that thing I said I was going to do, and did I do it or not? That's the accountability side of things, right? All right, well, let's jump in, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'm going to do my best to make this as interactive as possible. I know a lot of you have your cameras off right now, but I'd love to see some cameras on. I'd love to get some hand waves along the way. Also want to start off with just a little bit of brief housekeeping as we get started. If you got a pen and paper near you, now'd be a great time to grab it and have it nearby. So pen and paper, just get those. And if you got those with you, we're going to have some stuff along the way here. Obviously, you guys came here tonight to learn about goal setting. I'm going to teach you some of the trials and tribulations I've had along the way in goal setting, some of the systems we've gone through, and I'm going to share with you what the Happy Camper team is using with our team for not only our business goal setting, but our personal goal setting. Obviously we are whole people and we have whole lives. So, we do focus on both sides of that. So we're going to jump in here in just a minute. So I'm going to give you guys just a second while I give my introduction and get the technology going to get your pen and paper, and then just join us back here in 1 second. All right. Thumbs up as my screen show. All right, perfect. Thank you, Ramesh. All right, guys, so we're going to focus on making 2023 our best year ever. We set goals typically once per year. This is a common thing we do. And frankly, you don't have to wait till the end of the year. It just happens to be the most convenient time to do it. Something about starting the year fresh. January, having a new calendar year makes it exciting. But if ever you get off track, this is something you can revisit at any other time. These principles, you can start them in June, you can start them in September. It doesn't really matter when you do it. I've coached, as Don mentioned, many people in the past who said, well, I'll put that on my goals for next year. It's like, it'll be April at that point. I'm going, okay, what are you gonna do for the next 8 months, right? So even though I'm talking about 2023, like I said, there's no reason you shouldn't get started now. Any plan we forge tonight should not kick off 1/1/2023. It should kick off 12/9/2023, or 2022 rather. So let's dive in. I'll give you a little bit of background on me. As Don mentioned, I am one of the founding partners of Happy Camper Capital. My background it really goes back to, and if you guys don't know the story from the Happy Camper page, but I was in law enforcement for a decade. I spent 10 years as a police officer. My first taste of goal setting came while I was in law enforcement. I had a completely different mindset at that time. I was a canine handler. I was 7 years into that career, and I got the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. That was my first read that turned me on to the idea of goal setting. It was the first time I ever actually sat down and wrote goals out. The very first goals I wrote out was that I was going to own investment real estate and that I was going to become a paraglider pilot. So fast forward another 6 months after that, I had my first rental property. And I was a paraglider pilot. And actually that's how my business partner, or that's how my founding partner, Justin Hoggett, and I met, is paragliding. So this book was the very first one that introduced me to just simply writing your goals down. It seems like such a benign step, but it was something that made a really substantial difference in my life. We've now taken just that idea and we've actually systematized this and supercharged it. And what I'm going to say is booby-trapped our success to make sure that the goals we write actually have a measurable result and an action plan to get there. So, our team at Happy Camper, we've played with different systems. I've gone through many, many different systems. One of the ones we were applying this year to our business was one called the 12-week year. Another book, great system. Full disclosure, I can't take credit for any of these systems. I am an R&D expert, meaning rip off and duplicate. So when someone else has something I like, I take it and I apply it. Sometimes I merge concepts. But what I do really well is hold people accountable. So if someone tells me their goals, I'll badger them until they get it done, or better, find a way that they can punish themselves if they don't get it done. So that's one of the big components we're going to talk about here tonight is accountability. There are a lot of great systems out there. What I'm going to share with you tonight is a blend of a couple of different systems. So when I was coaching on the premises of The One Thing. The One Thing is a fantastic book by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. It is a business book and personal development book all rolled into one. We had principles of this from this book that we coached on. I had great success with it. In fact, we originally built Happy Camper Capital on the premises of this book. We are since making a pivot. The book on the right side of the screen called Traction by Gino Wickman is one that introduces the principles of the entrepreneurial operating system, or EOS. So Happy Camper Capital's goal setting and meeting processes are all now completely based on the principles in that book. And what I'm going to share with you tonight comes from Gino's other book on the left side of the screen, which is the EOS Life. So that's the entrepreneurial operating system applied to the personal life. But I'm still going to blend in some of the other principles that I like from The One Thing. I like to be able to cherry pick certain things from certain systems. So I'm going to dive in and share with you guys a great, great system for taking you from where you are now, whether you've never set defined goals in the past or you're a goal setting expert. I'm going to see if I can introduce you to something new tonight that you can get started with right away so that you can start pursuing your best life in the year to come. So goal setting, let's just talk about, one of the most common goals you'll hear people set, especially when we talk about this new year coming around, is the New Year's resolution. Everybody sets a New Year's resolution. They talk about some big change they're going to make in their life in the next year to come, but a very, very incredibly small percentage actually stick through with that goal. And why does that happen? I would love to open the floor up right now. Like I said, I want to make this as interactive as possible. If you got an answer, come off mute. I'd love to hear somebody share why they think when people set New Year's resolutions, they just don't happen. Anyone want to take a crack at that?
Hi, so this is Serenia. Hi, everyone. I think that sometimes that happens because we forget quickly. We forget what we set and we forget that we even have a goal. So that's why.
Spot on answer. Yeah, so we forget. And why might we forget about the goal we set for ourselves?
The why is not strong.
The why is not strong. Oh my gosh, I'm dealing with a room full of experts, aren't I? All right, we got to have our why, right? Yeah, 100%. So it's got to be meaningful to us. It's got to be something that's going to make an impactful difference in our lives. And sometimes when we're scrambling at the end of the year trying to come up with that thing we want to change the next year, we might pick something that doesn't have great meaning to us. There are a lot of other reasons that these might not come through. Some of those might be that they weren't measurable. How did you know when you were winning? How did you know when you got there? And sometimes it's just a lack of accountability, be it personal accountability or accountability from another. So we'll talk about some systems tonight and see what we can do to help catalyze success for you guys this year. But just this is something that I wrote in here. I just want to share with you guys. Without clarity in our goals, knowledge of the steps it'll take to achieve them, and a measurable way to track goal progress, it's incredibly difficult to know whether or not we are winning. So the question I'll ask when anybody tells me a goal is, how do you know when you're winning? And that's a great question to interrogate any of your goals with. How will you know when you've accomplished it? If your goal is to, get more healthier in 2023, well, how will you know when you're healthier? It might not necessarily be the number you step on the scale. If that's what a lot of people like to jump to, it might be something that you have the ability to do. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we make those goals measurable in just a moment. So I mentioned, of course, we're going to want a pen and paper. The other thing that I'll encourage you guys to grab after this tonight is going to be the what's called the VTO. There's a personal version of it. So I mentioned the traction systems are meant to be applied to business. However, there's also a format for personal life. I'm putting the link in the chat right now. So you can download this from Gino's website. So EOS Worldwide, there's the VTO personal family template. This is going to be the sheet that you're actually going to be able to put everything on that we work on tonight. So if you go ahead and just copy that link or just pull it up in the browser and jump back with us in just a second here, you'll be able to download that. He doesn't even ask you to put your email in or anything to download it. He gives all the stuff away. Great books to read, but I'm going to teach you guys how to use this tool here tonight, so you at least have a plan to go into and attack the next year and the next quarter specifically with. And then I say also you need to come in with an uninhibited mind. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've heard the comment before, well, I don't have time to goal set right now. I've got too much going on. You know, how can I focus on that when I'm so busy right now? You know, and the point is, how you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to have a plan going into the next month, the next quarter, the next year, heck, even the next day. So if you don't take time to plan, you're planning to fail. So when I say coming in with an uninhibited mind, it's putting any of those limiting beliefs that you have to the side. It's taking a moment to declutter your mind and to totally free up your attention toward what is going to help you be successful in the coming year. So if that means you've got something troubling you, maybe it's a project at work, maybe it's a family issue, and the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do is write down everything on your piece of paper that's just on your mind, that feels like you just can't get it done, can't get out of the way. And let's just put it on paper for now so you can free your attention up to be totally focused on your future success. Okay. So our goal setting process tonight, we're going to focus on our goals. And of course, whenever we focus on one thing, we're taking our attention away.
And one other thing is I'm an area director. So I'm still constantly talking with.
Hello? Was that an accidental unmute?
Yeah, that was excellent.
Okay, that's all right. All right, great. Well, let's jump in. So obviously, when we focus on one thing, we're going to take our attention away from something else, and that's exactly the purpose of what I'm asking you to do. Is let's take our attention away from those things that are distraction. Let's be completely present and make an investment of time into our future. Tonight, we're going to gain clarity on the areas we want to improve. I'm going to teach you a process to help you identify, if you don't know the goals you want to set, which areas of your life could use some attention right now. We've got a process for that coming up here shortly. And then, of course, I'm going to teach you how to prioritize your goals and limit the number of goals, not actually increase the number of goals, but limit the number of goals we're focusing on to make sure that we're focusing on the most impactful and monumental ones that are going to move our lives forward. So the very first exercise I'm going to ask you to do with your piece of paper is going to be one. This comes from a graphic in the book, The One Thing. I've used this exercise for a long time, and I highly encourage everyone join me on this. On your paper right now, there are these 7 items that are in circles on the screen, and I'm going to ask you to write these categories down. So you can write down your spiritual life, your physical health, your personal life, your key relationships, your job, your business, and your finances. You don't necessarily have to write them in the circle on the screen. You can actually write these on separate lines on a sheet of paper, but give yourself a little bit of room, maybe a line between each one. So we write down our spiritual life, our physical health, our personal life, our key relationships, our job, our business, and our finances. Now, job and business, this one trips a lot of people up. You know, they say, what's the difference between my job and my business? Now, my answer to you is going to be this: everything on here is open to your own interpretation. Key relationships, for example, has a different meaning for different people. For some people, key relationships is key business relationships, key connections that are going to take them to the next level in their business. For some people, it's key personal relationships, people who are going to help them grow to the next level, maybe loved ones, friends, family. So job and business can have their own personal meaning too. In most cases, your job is going to be your daily function, the thing you do on a day-to-day basis, and your business is what's achieved by performing your job on a day-to-day basis. So if you are employed by an employer, maybe you're not a business owner, your business is the product that you produce from your job. You know, so your business will be what maybe you take home. It could be your family business. So it could be what you produce toward your family's net worth, for example. Finance can be separate from that as well too. So, and if you have any questions on that, please feel free to drop it in the chat or shout it out. But the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do once you have these seven items written down is to do an audit in each area of your life. We'll take a brief minute here and let everyone give yourself a score on a scale of 1 to 10 for each area in your life. This is going to be very subjective, of course, but be honest with yourself about where you are in that area right now. And of course, 1 being the low end of that scale, 10 being on the high end of that scale. So give yourself a score for each of those 7 areas, 1 to 10, where you sit today. And the process we're working on right now is what I mentioned on the last slide, is going to help us focus on the areas of our life that we want to improve. So as I mentioned, of course, write down those 7 circles and then give yourself that 1 to 10 score in each box. And once you've given yourself a 1 to 10 score in each box, we're going to give you a little bit more time on the next sheet here to take those numbers you've given yourself in the same categories. And we are going to basically determine what it's going to take to move up 1 level in each of those areas, just 1 level. So a great example would be if you gave yourself a 4 on physical health. I'm not asking you to say right now what it's going to take to make it a 10, because you may not even know what a 10 is today, especially if you're a 2 right now. You may not know what a 10 looks like, but I bet you know what a 3 looks like. I bet you know what it would take just to make that incremental increase. So going down that list of 7 items for each score you gave yourself, find out identify the one thing it would take to move yourself from whatever number you put yourself at to the next number right above it. If today your finances are at a 6, what's it going to take to make it a 7? Just small changes. These don't have to be anything huge and monumental. These just need to be one small thing that will take you 1 level above where you are today. I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes here just to jot down a brief note on each one as to what will help advance you to the next level. Now, as we're writing these down, if anybody's getting stuck on these or has any questions on this process and how it works, feel free to unmute yourself or to put a note in the chat. I'd be happy to support you on this. But like I said, we're only looking to make just small incremental changes at first here, just identifying the little things that we can do that are going to make a big impact in our lives as they add up over time. All right, we've been about 2 minutes in now. Of course, if you haven't had enough time to finish this list yet, that's okay. This is a process that you can revisit later or finish later, but we're going to move forward in the interest of time tonight and making sure that we can get you guys well into this goal setting process. The next step in this is going to be to take that list of items you said are going to advance you to the next level, and we are going to identify the one item on that list that is going to make the biggest impact in your life. So of those 7 little things you said could improve each area of your life, which one either by itself is going to make the most meaningful difference in your life, or which one has the power to create a ripple effect in your life where it will improve other areas of your life. And I'll give you a great example about this. One that has come up with many of my coaching clients over the years has been physical health. I pick on physical health a lot just because it's the #1 goal that my clients have worked on that have improved other areas of their life. And typically it looks something like this. Today, I'm a 4 in physical health. I don't feel confident in myself. I don't feel strong. I don't feel healthy. And it impacts the way I feel about myself. And it impacts the way I show up in my key relationships. It impacts the way I show up in my personal life. My confidence is low. I don't take big chances. My business suffers as a result. And it's one of those things where for that person, if they get themselves looking better, feeling better, they're going to show up different in all these different areas of their life, and it's going to make the biggest impact. So physical health has been the number one that I will say that most people I've worked with have chosen as their number one. However, if your financial house isn't in order right now, and it's something that causes a loss of sleep, which affects the way you show up in your business, it affects the way you show up for your loved ones, working on your finances, setting a budget, adhering to a budget could be your number one. This is totally personal and completely subjective. So the question, of course, the clarifying question from the book, The One Thing, that I love is, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? So identifying which one of these 7 things you wrote down is going to make the biggest impact and go forward. If someone just had an aha with that, come off mute and share it if you're willing to do so. I'd love to hear it. All right. Shy audience, we'll warm you guys up as we go on.
So you're right, shy audience for sure. Coming out and saying, definitely it's an aha moment. It's more or less like, thanks for the guidance in terms of what most of your previous clients have looked at. I think the physical health kind of is the base of a lot of other problems. I guess when I wrote down also the problems, everything was linked to that. Starting from getting up in the morning is the first thing, and the rest of the things would fall in place if I could rise before the sun rises. So it's as simple as that.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. Waking up early, it makes a big difference in the life. Having a morning routine that's I could do a whole other course just on that alone. Having a process to start your day with for success. And if it involves physical health, all the better. All right. Awesome. Well, let's skip ahead here. So again, if you haven't identified the one yet, just write this down as a task to do later. If you still need to go through that list a couple more times to identify what is the one thing that we can focus on going forward, because we're going to make that the cornerstone of at least the next quarter, if not the next year, as we jump into the process. So this is going to be where we start merging 2 systems together. So the system I gave you for really focusing on where your priorities lie comes from The One Thing. Now, there's a process called goal setting to the now in The One Thing, which involves starting at a someday goal. It involves starting at what does your life look like far off in the future? We're going to focus more on what the next 10 years looks like. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is take that top priority that you've identified that you're going to focus on. And so we did start small. We did pick what's the next thing we can do. That was an easy start, right? That helped us identify where we're going to begin. But now we want to cast a bigger vision. Maybe if you said that your step that was going to get you from level 3 to level 4 on physical health was to go to the gym tomorrow and get a membership and go do your first workout. But what's level 10 going to look like? Because now that we know what level 4 looks like, we can achieve that fairly quickly. So now we need to identify what 10 looks like so we can begin working backwards and actually be systematic about this. So we've identified our number 1. That's going to be our most important one. I'm going to say less is more when it comes to how many goals we choose to focus on in the coming quarter, especially if this is your first time doing this. Setting one goal that you focus on and that you're intentional about and that you're in relationship with means a lot more than setting 3 goals that you check in with occasionally and you don't consistently follow. So if you've identified one that by itself is going to be enough to carry you forward, fantastic. I would encourage you though to take a look through and see if you can pick maybe one more, possibly 3 if you already got some experience setting goals. But if this is your first time doing this, if you're new to goal setting, 1, maybe 2 to get started. Again, if this is not your first time, pick up to 3 that are going to be your main focuses for the coming year and the coming quarter. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to set a big vision for what it's going to look like when you actually achieve level 10. So to do this, like I mentioned, of course, we aren't starting with the infinite, someday goal that The One Thing would suggest. We're going to start with what Gino Wickman calls the 10-year target in both traction and the EOS life. So 10 years is a little more attainable. It's a little more easy to measure. We know what 10 years from now will be. It's going to be 2032 or 2033 as we're wrapping up the coming calendar year. So what we want to do is, of course, figure out what our life is going to look like in that area 10 years from now. And perhaps you will have already peaked out the goal that you're working on well before 10 years, or it might be something that you continue to work toward. Some of the goals that we prioritized before may or may not have the same relevancy 10 years from now. However, let's at least set what that level 10 target is going to be like for us. So by doing this, of course, saying if physical health was the focus and our step to get from today to tomorrow was signing up for a gym class, well, maybe if we want to create a life of physical health, our 10-year measurable target is that we've climbed, the top mountain peaks. So like the suggestion I have down here, this is a SMART goal, is on December 31st, 2032, I want to be in the best health of my life, and I'll know I'm there if I've climbed 3 of the world's highest peaks, having a measure. So we'll know at that point if we've achieved that goal or not. All right. So of course, like I said, 1 to 2 for beginners, no more than 3 goals, of those priority areas that we focused on. Ideally, one of those would be in your business if you're a business owner. So we can have focus on that as we grow forward, and we'll set a 10-year target. So now once we've got that target built, we're going to move on to actually setting SMART goals. I shared an example of a SMART goal on the last page, and a SMART goal is an acronym for a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely or time-bound. So an example of what's not a SMART goal, and this is where a lot of folks get in trouble with the New Year's resolution, is they say things like, I want to get in shape, or I want to lose weight. Well, a want is one thing. However, if you don't have a measure, I'll go back to my question before. How will you know when you are winning? If you say, I want to lose weight, well, is 1 pound losing weight, or is 20 pounds losing weight, right? How will you know when you got there? Is it the way you look when you get in the mirror? Is it your belt size? Is it your BMI? There are a lot of things you can do to measure this, but one thing we need to do is we need to know when we get there. And then it needs to be time bound. We need to know when to get there, because if you say, I want to lose weight, well, okay, does that mean in this year, in your lifetime, in 10 years? What's the time bound for this? Of course, it has to be relevant. If it's not relevant to you, you won't give it the importance it deserves. We spoke about that at first too, as to why New Year's resolutions don't succeed, is because sometimes they just aren't relevant. We picked it up, grabbed it out of the air because it was December 31st and we felt like we needed to have one. And we realized it really didn't mean a lot to us. It's got to be achievable. Now, this is a tough one that gets me in trouble often. I'm a proponent of setting very, very large goals. I like the idea of setting a goal so big that it scares me, and I'm content if I fall just short of hitting it. However, they do need to be within the realm of true possibility. They have to be within earthly possibility as it stands, so that you will see it as a relevant goal, one which you can actually achieve. All right. So obviously any goal that we write, that 10-year target we start with, is going to be a SMART goal. So we obviously, if we're writing for the coming calendar year, and if we're looking 10 years out, we're going to be looking out to December 31st, 2033. So that'll get us through that 10th year going forward. And of course, I'm going to add another element to the SMART goal, and it's what I call a SMARTY goal. So a SMART goal is, again, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely. But we also talked about this on the New Year's resolutions, is the why. So I like adding a why to SMART goals to make it a SMARTY goal. So now we've taken that and we've supercharged that SMART goal with, on December 31st, 2023, I will weigh 185 pounds because it's important to me that I am around to live a long life for my family. So if you can put that in your goal, and now you have, when you go and get into a relationship with your goals and review them on a regular basis, you can remember why you set it in the first place. So that's my take on the SMART goal, making it a SMARTY goal. So if you've gone to the link that I put in the chat on the EOS website and downloaded the Personal Family VTO, that 10-year target is going to go right here in the middle of the screen. I'm not going to go through all the exercises on the sheet. I highly suggest reading the EOS Life if you want to focus on personal goals, and again, Traction if you want to focus on business goals. And that can walk you through the exercise for setting your core values and identifying the passions. Tonight, we're focusing on the goal setting component of this. So that's where we're going to start with our 10-year targets. So these are going to be where we put our SMARTY goals in there. given a measurable timeline, given, you know, of course, being achievable, relevant, timely, specific, and having that why in there. You may have to write small to fit those in, but getting those identified, those 1 to 3 max identified in there. Once we've identified a 10-year target, we are going to work through the goal setting to the now process to go down to a 3-year picture. So we're going to take a big leap down from 10 years to 3 years. We're literally going to reverse engineer the goal to go backwards. And by doing that, we're going to ask one of 2 questions. We're going to say, where do I need to be in the next 3 years or to be on track for my 10-year goal? Or what do I need to do in the next 3 years to be on track for my 10-year goal? So in some cases, this may be easily measurable. If this is something that you know will happen incrementally on a linear scale, then it just needs to be 30% of your 10-year goal. However, most goal achievement is not seen this way. Most goal achievement is parabolic, parabolic, and will accelerate rapidly. So you may actually see slower measures in the next 3 years. You may be building that foundation toward your goal, and it's going to see massive rapid acceleration in the last couple of years. So not every goal can just simply be, you know, multiplied by 30% to set that 3-year target. These might be certain milestones you've achieved along the way. So let's use our health example that we used from the beginning. And if we were saying that our 10-year target was to be in great physical health and to have climbed 3 of the world's highest peaks, we may not have even climbed 1 of the world's highest peaks in 3 years. Frankly, we might not be conditioned for that yet. We might not be ready there yet. However, we might have climbed some of our state's highest peaks. You know, like here in Colorado, you might have climbed some of our 14,000-foot peaks, our 14ers. You know, they aren't the highest mountains in the world, but that might be a great starting point. You might have a number of those that you've added up by then, and you might be training for your first peak. And all 3 of those peaks you said you're going to climb might all happen in year 10. You never know. Or they might happen in years 9 and 10. So, you know, you don't necessarily, this might be a tough process, but you have to be real with yourself and say, where do I need to be on track for the goal 3 years from now? So we're going to do this for each of the goals we've picked to break down our 10-year target into our 3-year picture. Okay. Now, when we do the 3-year picture, as you would have noticed on the VTO, there are fields on here for the future date. So of course, we do want to build our future date into this. In this case, if we're starting in 2023, we're going to be going through the end of 2025 to hit that picture. So if this is a plan that kicks off on 1/1 of 23, then it is going to go through 12/31 of 2025. So we'll fill in our future date. Now is when we take a 10-year target, which we were intentionally very vague about on the left side. We were intentionally just leaving it at the SMART goal. And we are going to actually start breaking down some other areas. You know, of course, this sheet encouraged you to have things like your income, your net worth, and to identify what your measures of success are going to be. So this is a great time for you to say, you know, and this might be pie in the sky in some means, or you might actually be able to do the math to figure out what your income is going to look like 3 years from now. Especially the real estate investors in the room, you might be able to take a look at the number of doors you have today, figure out what the market rent increases are going to be, figure out how many more properties you're going to add in that time, and do some math backwards to figure out what your income is going to be. You might be able to identify what your net worth is going to be, or you might just set a target right now just to see if you can achieve it. So we can fill in our income, our net worth, and our measurables are going to be the things that we are tracking to know that we are successful. So take from the priorities that we're focusing on, that we're setting our goals on, we're going to pull out the measurables. You know, again, so if your measure of health had to do with climbing mountains and you were going to focus on how many mountains you're going to climb, that might be one of the measurables we put in. If your focus on your business was going to be lead generation, it might be how many phone calls you're going to make. So you're not necessarily going to put a number in for measurables, but you're going to identify the metric that you're going to be tracking in there. So putting those metrics in. And then, of course, you have a bunch of lines for what does it look like. So what you're doing is you're saying, if I'm hitting my goals, if these are working out, what will my life look like? You're actually painting a picture for yourself. Some call this rehearsal. So you're actually rehearsing what your life is going to look like when you've achieved that success. So you might identify the things that you have that in your life, the things that are going on in your life, the things that are happening as a result of you being on track with your goals and achieving the things you said you were going to achieve. I'm going to pause before I break it down to the next step for any questions we might have in the room. Have we had anybody get stuck? Any questions? Anything that you'd like me to explain a little better? Outstanding. All right. Keep moving forward here. So we've taken our 3-year, we've broken down our measures, we've written them in on the VTO. We are going to now break down to our 1-year. So on the back side of that sheet, or on the second page of that personal family VTO, you are going to see, stand by 1 second. You're going to see that we now have a 1-year plan, and we have rocks for the next 90 days. So we're going to start doing our goal setting to the now on the 1-year. And we are going to ask ourselves the same exact questions we did going from 10 years down to 3 years. So for each of those 1 to 3 goals that we're going to be focusing on, we're going to ask ourselves the same clarifying questions. Where do I need to be in the next 1 year to be on track for my 3-year goal? And what do I need to do in the next 1 year to be on track for my 3-year goal? And of course, if you ever have trouble understanding it, ask yourself, how will I know when I've achieved it? How will I know when I'm winning? To help you make sure that that goal is smart as you go along. So we're going to be repeating the same exact process. We went from 10 years to 3 years, but this time going to the 1 year. So again, we talked about that parabolic curve, or that hockey stick, as we talk about a lot in business and growth, that we might see very little in the next year. We're laying the foundation. If we're going with our fitness goal and we're going to be, mountaineers, the next year we might spend just getting our physical health back to where it needs to be, doing cardio training, doing weight training, improving our diet, eating better, reading books on mountaineering, taking classes on rock climbing, the things that we might need to do to get ourselves to that point. We might not climb a single mountain in the next year. We might just be laying the groundwork for it. So, this is where we're using this process to make sure that we're on track. And the best part is, this is not something that we now have to live by. We don't have to live by this 10-year plan as it's written today for the next 10 years. The great thing is we get to reevaluate this every single year, or I encourage twice a year, at least twice a year, doing this goal setting process and setting new targets. Because what you may find out 5 years from now, the 10-year goal you set tonight is no longer relevant. It's completely changed. Maybe you've already achieved it. So if we keep working toward that goal on the same pace, that would be silly. So this is a process that we continue to repeat, and it continues to grow and evolve with us. We're doing this tonight to reverse engineer back to what we need to do in the next 1 year, because it's going to be much more relevant to us. We've got the attention span to actually focus on 1 year a lot easier than we do 3 years or 10 years. And we still need to be a little more focused than that, because our attention span will wear out before the end of the full year. So after we've set 1 year targets, we're going to go all the way down to 90 days. We're going to look at the next year in 4 big chunks of quarters. So same way we do this in business, we track quarter by quarter. We're going to do the same exact thing in our personal life. We're going to use those same exact clarifying questions to break down our 1 year goals that we've set for ourselves down to the next 90 days. And this is going to be more or less a 90-day action item list for the things that we need to do to accomplish our goals. So where do I need to be in the next 90 days to be on track for my 1 year goal? And what do I need to do in the next 90 days to be on track for my 1 year goal? Are going to be the questions we ask ourselves to start breaking down an action item list. And of course, we're going to call these things rocks, and less is more. I can't stress this enough. You can make a long list of things you need to do, but we need to identify the core measures of success that are going to get us there. And why do I call these rocks? I know my team has heard, the story of the rocks in the jar, but for those of you who haven't heard, rocks are the story of the rocks is this. There was a teacher who was teaching a class, and he had a big glass cylinder with him. And he took some large rocks and he put them in the glass cylinder in front of the class, and he stacked them up to the top of the jar. And he asked the class, "Is the jar full?" And a couple right off the bat saw the big rocks stacked up to the top, and they said, "Well, yes, the jar's full. It's full of big rocks." So the instructor pulled out a bucket of pea gravel, and he dumped the pea gravel in, and the gravel went in and it filled in around the big rocks that were in the jar, and it filled right up to the top. And people kind of saw the trick and understood what happened. And so he asked this class again, "Well, is the jar full now?" And a couple people still said yes, because they saw the gravel that had filled in all around the rocks, all the gaps. So the teacher pulled out a bucket of sand, poured the bucket of sand over the top, and the sand, being smaller granules than even the pea gravel, filled in the gaps between the pea gravel and the rocks, all the way from the bottom to the top of the jar. And once he had it full of sand, he patted it down on the top and asked him if it was full. And at this point, even more people jumped in and said, yes, it's full now. It definitely looks full. It looks like there's nothing smaller that we know than sand that could fit in there, until, of course, the instructor pulled out a jar of water and poured the water, and the water saturated the sand and completely filled the jar to the top. The moral of the story being, there is an order of importance to the things we put in our lives, into our schedules in our lives. And the same applies to that jar. And the jar is a good visual reference, because if you'd filled that jar with the gravel and the sand and the water first, there would have been no room for the rocks. So the rocks in our life are the most important things we need to focus on in the coming year. And if these, at least that top priority area that we identified at the beginning, and possibly the one or two behind it that are following, if those are the priorities that we said they were, those are the rocks in our lives that matter above all else. Every other fire and emergency that comes up in your day-to-day pales by comparison to the rock that you identified. So those rocks are going to end up in our schedules first, which is why we call them that. We're going to identify what those rocks are. And the most critical step is going to be, once they're identified, is actually putting them on your calendar to make sure they happen. So we'll talk more about that as we go forward here. But what we're going to be doing is identifying a list of rocks that are going to go on the VTO. And you'll see that this does follow the same format as the 3-year and the 1 year. We're going to put what that future date is. We're going to put what the income, the net worth, the measurables, and the goals are. Now, the 1 year might be a bigger number. And I'll tell you this, our income for the next 90 days might not be much different than it is today. Our net worth for the next 90 days might not be much different than it is today. Or it might be different because you know you're going to do something that's going to affect it. If you set a goal that you were going to make an investment in the next 90 days that was going to increase your net worth, you might set a target for what that increase is going to be as a result. As always, we're going to put our measurables in, the things we're going to track. These could vary on a quarter-to-quarter basis, more so than they would on the 1 year, 3 year, and 10 year. Because again, if we're going back to our mountain climbing example, we might not climb any mountains in the next 90 days, but we might be tracking how many times we go to the gym if we're starting that fitness regimen to get ourselves in shape and moving. So we might be tracking gym days, we might be tracking calories consumed, things like that. So we're going to fill in those rocks here. The rocks are going to be very, very specific for the next 90 days. And as I mentioned, less is more. For the 2 to 3 goals that we set for ourselves, we shouldn't have more than about 8 to 9 rocks on here for all of them collectively. And even that is going to be a very, very busy quarter for you. And you're going to need to identify the order you can do them in and how many of those can run concurrent, and then mark them on your calendar. I would suggest when you print the VTO out and hang it somewhere you can see it, because it's got to be visible. It's got to be somewhere that you're going to run into it every morning when you're brushing your teeth or getting dressed or making your breakfast, that you can have a symbol on there for the rocks that are in progress, the ones that are scheduled on the calendar, the ones that have been completed, so that you can know you're on track to complete your rocks. All right, so let's talk about how we actually take a goal and break it down into things we need to do. I'm going to pivot back now to the one thing, because I think this is a tool that comes from there that works really well in helping you identify those if you got stuck on the last steps of just simply taking the goals and breaking them down to the items you need to do. So in the one thing, we use a system called the GPS, which stands for goals, priorities, and strategies. And you start with your SMART goal, and you roll it backwards to figure out the priorities that you're going to need to achieve it, and the strategies to achieve those priorities. So in this case here, if we were working with a short-term health goal, you can see for the next 90 days that we're going to be looking to bring the weight down to 195, someone who's got a weight loss goal. Well, I'm going to identify 3 priorities for that, which are exercise, healthy eating or diet, and accountability to get us there. So those would be the priorities we need to focus on if we're going to get to that weight, that SMART goal weight, in the next 90 days. Pardon me, I'm having a computer freeze up over here on my end. There we go. All right. So we're going to take each of those priorities now, and we're going to break these down into strategies for achieving them. This is going to help inform the rocks that we're going to identify for ourselves. So you can do this at the 1 year goal level, and then you can do this at the quarterly goal level to break those backwards. So let's pick on just the exercise priority. So the strategies for doing the exercise needed to bring that weight down would be things like, for example, signing up for a gym membership and going 3 days each week, going for 3 bike rides each week, going for a hike every week, practicing yoga for 15 minutes in the morning, and signing up for a bike race that you're going to do in the fall. So these are all things now that you could go through and identify which of these are priorities that you're going to focus on in the next quarter, which are the ones that are going to be the most critical that you've got to put them in as rocks. Those are likely going to be the recurring things, and everything else is going to get scheduled. So if we're going to sign up for a bike race, well, we need to actually schedule the time we're going to sign up for. We can't just say we're going to do it or it won't happen. Got to put a time on the schedule to put a time on the schedule. And then of course, things like signing up for the gym, it's got to be on the calendar. If it's not on the schedule, it doesn't exist. So this is a great process, I think, for taking a goal and helping you break it down. So figuring out what those priorities are going to be and identifying the strategies that will help you get there. And the most important thing you'll notice is that each one of these is measurable. You know, each one of these is something that you can say, yes, I did it, or no, I did not do it. Going to the gym 3 days each week, going for 3 bike rides each week. If you go for 2, you didn't achieve what you said you were going to do to be on track for it. Do we have any questions at this point? If anybody has a question, please feel free to come off mute. I'd love for this to be conversational. Anything's come up along the way. All right. So next steps, of course, are going to be to complete the VTO. My encouragement would be not tomorrow, this evening. The link is already in the chat room. Print the sheet out, get started on this, and then schedule those rocks. Put them on the calendar. Make sure that they actually make it in there. We need a system for accountability. So accountability is a tough one. I am challenged with whether or not someone can really truly hold themselves accountable. I find in bringing in others, accountability partners or coaches, is a great way to make sure that you're solidifying that accountability. I don't know about you, but if I tell someone I'm going to do something, you better believe I'm going to do it, because I don't want to have to go back to that person and tell them I didn't do the thing I said I was going to do. It's easier to let yourself go on something or to make excuses for yourself. So creating a system for accountability, finding someone else who you can take the recording of this webinar, email it to them following this tonight and say, hey, I want you to join me in this. I want you to identify your goals, share them with me, and then we're going to set up a weekly call or a weekly day that we go get coffee, and we're going to check in on each other's goals and make sure we're on track for it. I see I've got a hand up. Kumar?
Yep. Adam, one of the biggest challenges is getting that accountability in place. I mean, otherwise, I would have done it by now. I was just speaking to my sister the other day, and she said, if you wanted, you would have done it, right? I mean, it's so simple, but it's so true. I mean, if I wanted it, I should have done it, but more often than not, I end up in a situation where I desperately want it, but I haven't done it.
Yes, absolutely.
How do I break that, right? It's simple, be accountable, put it on a piece of paper, print it, see it everywhere you can see, I try this almost every year. And it works for the first 1 week, 10 days, 15. And then the only thing that is left besides the soreness that comes from the first week at gym is whenever I see the recurring charge on the credit card.
That's right. And I pardon my term on this, but that's what they call fat tax, unfortunately, is not going to the gym, but continuing to pay the.
Yeah, absolutely. But any small tips or anything that help you, finally it'll fall on me to implement that, but anything that you've done differently or you've suggested anyone to do this thing differently that made them change the course of action, or kind of given them a chance to succeed this time?
Yeah, well, and that's great question. So kind of as I was suggesting, holding yourself accountable is a very difficult thing to do. Actually having the fortitude to stick through something when nobody else knows about it, boy, you can have a great conversation with yourself in your head and convince yourself that you don't need to do that thing anymore. It's not important. You can take a day off today. You worked hard at the gym yesterday. You're tired today. You can get another hour of sleep. You don't need to get up and go. You can make a million excuses to yourself, but if you have a gym partner who's waiting at the gym for you, you're not going to leave them waiting. Boy, you'd feel like a real jerk if you left them waiting there and you said you were going to be there the next day. So, having other people invested in your goals with you is an absolutely critical step. This is why I suggest finding someone who you trust, who has high integrity, who is willing to hold your feet to the fire. Have a conversation with them right off the bat and say, hey, would you be willing to not let me off easy, even if I'm having a weak moment, a weak day, and I came to you and said, you know, I with an excuse as to why I didn't do the thing I said I was going to do. And if you find someone who says they'll do it, then I would take that person up on it and do the same back for them. Set challenges, and if you need to actually intensify that a little bit, if you start an accountability partnership with someone, you find that you're still not hitting your goals, and those goals are important to you. We identified that these are things that are going to make changes in your life. Then we need to identify something that is going to motivate you to do it. On our team at Happy Camper, we have a system that was brought to us actually by Don. Don was the one who brought it to the group, called the CPR, and that's the challenge, punishment, and reward. So it's a little of the carrot and the stick. You set a measurable challenge for yourself, and then you identify a punishment that's going to happen if you don't achieve the challenge, and also a reward that you'll get if you do achieve it. So I like this system a lot more than just the carrot or the stick, because some people, frankly, the punishment is not enough for them. You know, that's not enough to motivate them to do it. They'll just say, you know what, I'll take it. I'll deal with it. But if you give them something to actually drive forward, we're kind of hitting them from the front and the back side to make sure they're on track for their goal. So getting other people involved in this, enlisted in this. I like what I call nuclear options sometimes too, which is just, you know, taking, if you have a, you know, something that would really motivate you, like a negative, and, you know, and I'll give you a great example would be, maybe you have I hate to bring politics in, but maybe you have a politician you don't like. You write a check to their campaign and you give it to that accountability partner in a sealed envelope with a stamp on it. And you say, hey, if I don't hit my target when I said I'm going to hit it, stick this in the mail. And boy, that's a tough one. You know, you definitely don't want to see that person get your check. You don't want to see them get your money. You know, I've had it before. I've had people who were going to quit their W-2 and go into business. And, you know, we've identified a goal for when their quit date's going to be. I'll have them write their resignation letter, put it in an envelope to their boss. And then, you know, it's my job to turn it in on the date. I can't not deliver it. I promised I was going to do it. So, you know, we found before that'll motivate someone to do the things they need to do to get their business going. So a lot of accountability tricks you can work on. I'd love to share more with you if you need any guidance on it offline. But get an accountability system in place. Like I said, holding, you know, self-accountability is not simple. If you're connected with anyone on the Happy Camper team, or if you're not yet connected, we'd be happy to help support you in this as well too. And then of course, reorient the goals. As I mentioned, this is not a one and done process. This is not something that we just do once and forget about. They are going to change. Life's going to throw you curveballs. We've seen in the past couple of years, lots of things can change when you're not expecting them. You know, we've had lots of incidents come up that have thrown us around, you know, more than we expected. So set some time aside. Again, I suggest scheduling on the calendar at least once a week to revisit those goals, lay out the plan for the week, schedule the rocks, put them on the calendar. Remember, if you don't put the rocks on your schedule is going to fill in with sand and gravel, and there won't be room up for your rocks. And then your priorities are pushed down the road later. But we said they're priorities, so we got to make sure they get on the first time. And then, of course, repeat this entire process. Like I said, I encourage a minimum of twice a year. But of course, if we're going to be doing the rocks on a quarterly basis, absolutely. When you set your first ones tonight, put time on your calendar to set the next 90 days from now. So go back and repeat this process and set your new 90-day goals. So with that, I'm going to open the floor for any questions that have come up or any comments.
Yeah, Adam, I just want to add one thing.
Yes.
I always tell myself and others do this all the time, right? We might have like 10,000 reasons or excuses not to do certain things, even though it's been written as a goal or something. But you need to have that one valid reason that kind of drives you crazy to do those elements, you know, like an accountability partner, as you said, or anything that would really motivate you. You know, for me, like a personal example, and you know this, right? You know, when I was going to my mom's anniversary function in India, I was, she always tells me when she was alive, you know, Ramesh, you have to focus on your health and eat and everything else. I said it before I go to that function, I just have to reduce 15 pounds. And within 6 months, even though I was doing a lot of other things, that was like kind of reminding me every day, pretty much. I have like 4 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, when I was, end of the day, when I boarded the plane, I lost like 16 pounds. Right. That is like basically a driving factor. You really need a valid reason that kind of keeps you pushing along those lines so that your goal setting kind of happens no matter what. Right. And I obviously, as you said, our CPR really makes it a relief for us to go on and make things work on a weekly basis.
That's right. Good sharing on that story, Ramesh. And yeah, I mean, again, it to quote Simon Sinek's book title, start with why. It all ties back to the why you're doing this. It's going to be critical that you know what the purposes of these goals. So like I said, if you liked what you heard tonight, like I said, I can't take credit for any of them. I credit these 3 books. Anyone who is a business owner, I strongly suggest reading Traction. Even if you don't employ the systems, it's going to give you some great guidance on your business. EOS Life is the principles that we are coaching the Happy Camper team on now for personal goal setting. Like I mentioned, we're doing our business through Traction. The one thing is still incredibly relevant. If you're just getting started, this is a great first personal development book. If you have not read one yet, it's going to teach you some great tools for setting goals, creating habits, and achieving success. So like I said, I can't take credit for any of these systems. I just compiled pieces that I liked from the 3 of them. If you have any questions, I've got about another 2 minutes that we can keep the floor open for questions. But otherwise, make sure you hit that link in the chat so you can download the BTO and get started tracking those goals today. Just remember, putting them in writing is going to be a critical first step toward actually achieving them. Bringing in a system of accountability, telling another person about them is going to increase those odds of achieving them even more. So, get that plan in action. Of course, if one of your goals for the coming year is increasing your investment portfolio, investing in new assets, improving your net worth, we at Happy Camper would love the opportunity to have a conversation with you about some of the things we have going, such as our Outdoor Hospitality Sun and Fund, or some of the other investment vehicles that we're going to be unleashing this year. So that's it for me. Don, if you want to close things out here in a minute, or if we have any other questions, we'd be happy to field them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. I was going to throw in the similar plug. As many people have some kind of financial goal of some sort, just improving their finances. Maybe their 10-year goal is achieving that financial freedom, financial independence. So your small steps along the way would be, increasing your passive income or increasing your investment options. So like as Adam mentioned, we have that 506C fund that is out there right now, available for anybody to get into right now. Receive great tax benefits and start those steps to achieve that financial goal. So again, thank you, Adam, for taking the time to present this to everybody here. One more second. Any final questions or comments from anybody else that's here?
Adam, thank you so much. That was a great presentation.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It's really an honor to have your time out of your evening to meet with us.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Yep. Have a great night, and hopefully you end the year right and get these goals set to start off on your path to success right now. Don't wait till January. Get it started right now.
Tomorrow.
All right.
Yep. That's right.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
All right.